We have got the political freedom about 75 years back. But I'm not sure how many of us have got the economic freedom. When I say economic freedom, what do I mean by that? Most of the time, most small and large organizations have taken a lot of debt from the friends or banks. And whenever we take money from anyone, please be assured you will have to keep them in good humor. And many times we do things diametrically opposite of what we should be doing just to cater to the people from whom we have taken the money. Why I have chosen the topic of debt-free? Because in my mind, this is the biggest curse anyone can have. I know I'm speaking quite opposite of what the normal conventional wisdom has been sort of shared with most people. But I do look up to Warren Buffett. In his book, in one of the books, Seeking Wisdom, on page 157, he shares, I'm repeating his quote, whenever a really bright person who has a lot of money goes broke, it is because of leverage. It is almost impossible to go broke without borrowed money being in the equation. You might have noticed that today there are many organizations, small as well as large, who are struggling to stay afloat. And this is where we'll have to now look at it. If any organization which has been there for more than 10 or 20 years, it means in the last 10, 20 years, they must have done some good thing that they are still alive today, which means they must have done something positive. Simple words, they must have made money. I'm not yet speaking how to measure money, but they have made some money. That's why they are able to survive till today. How come after 10 or 20 years, or maybe sometime 30, 40 years also, companies which were making tons of money are struggling for staying afloat? This is my reason to have this webinar. Early in my childhood, my father had shared one small quote for me. Debt is like a steroid. Once in a while, in emergency, you may have to take debt or steroids to stay alive or come out of a crisis. But do not try to make your six packs through steroids or take debt, what I call, to increase your growth. At this stage, I would like to first ask in a very simple manner, what is the goal of any organization in the world, any commercial organization? I'm not talking of NGOs. What is the goal? Many people say our goal is growth. So the next question comes, what is growth? Growth in what? Growth in what? That's also very important to know. Most people believe growth is in sales. But this is my question to everyone. Look at the very large companies who have folded in the last couple of years, whether it's in India or abroad. Being large, having large market share or very large sales does not prevent you from dying. You can still die. Now look at it. Let me take the example from our own life. What is that one thing if we do not have next 3, 4, 5 minutes, we will die? Can anybody respond? Oxygen. Thank you. Now, similar to oxygen, we have something called in the business called cash. if you got cash, how you get the cash is another aspect. So long you have cash, you can survive. But the moment you go, whether oxygen or shortage of cash, the writing is very clear, you are about to die. No company folds up because it has declared a loss. But if you don't have cash, then it's unlikely that you'll survive for long. And there are many, many, many examples I need not quote here. Companies fold up when they run out of cash. Cash is like oxygen or blood in the body. If you don't have cash, nothing else matters. Now let's move on. The goal of the company, growth. Growth in what? I'll make a simple suggestion. Growth in money making. Incidentally, money making is also an index of customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. I'll explain it very quickly. It's very fashionable to say our goal is to be customer delight, to have a customer delight. Of course, our experience from our suppliers is not very much in alignment with this. Nevertheless, for the time being, we'll assume our goal is to delight our customers. Is it possible to delight our customers in short and long if our employees are not happy? I believe short term, yes, long term, no. My next question would be, is it possible to satisfy our employees if we don't make money? Short term, yes, but long term, no. So in order to satisfy the customer, delight the customer, it is imperative. It's not a luxury. It's not an option. We have to make money. And as the demands of the customers are going more and more every day, it is not enough to delight them today. What is delight today will just satisfy them tomorrow, and day after, they will be positively dissatisfied. So similar to increasing the delight of the customer, employees also asking for more and more money, period after period. Now, this is only possible if the organizations make more and more money. So for the time being, at least for next 2 hours, I'm assuming that our goal is to make more and more money. I shorten it to saying our goal is 4M, more and more money. Next question comes, how the hell shall we measure this making money? There are so many parameters. Let me share a few of them. EBITDA is one of them. Most companies measure. I don't know why, because interest and depreciation and tax, somebody else is not going to pay. You are only going to pay. So why are you excluding it? Perhaps if your company is planning to sell it off, and for some reason, I believe valuation is highly dependent on this parameter called EBITDA. Perhaps yes, but if the goal of your company is to make more and more and more money for the foreseeable future, to my mind, then EBITDA is not the right parameter. Next comes what we call cash profit. Whenever you ask someone, have you made profit? And his answer or her answer is, we made cash profit. What it means, their profit is not adequate enough to cover the depreciation part of it. And how do we measure depreciation? It depends upon the depreciation policy of the company. Actually, profit before tax can also be manipulated by deciding what is your revenue recognition mechanism or policy, how is your inventory valuation done, and a host of other things, how often you're writing off your investments, how often you're writing off your goodwill, etc., etc. Now, my question comes, what is the purpose of any measurement? Dr. Goldratt, my guru in theory of constraints, he shared long time back, the only purpose of any measurement is to help you take the right corrective action or help the people derive their behavior in that direction. Why should we tell people what to do? Let the measurements drive. In my experience of over 23 years in theory of constraints, even though companies which are struggling for cash, when I look at their MIS, either it does not come there at all, or even if it comes, it is way down their MIS, or most of the time, the top parameter in most companies, what I've observed, is sales or sales growth, and so on. Of course, there are a few companies who do measure cash also right at the top, but there are very, very few. There's one parameter which is very difficult to fudge, if not impossible. That is your cash in the bank. No matter how you write your books, cash in the banks is unlikely to go up or go down. While everything else, whether it's profit after tax, profit before tax, cash profit, EBITDA, etc., can be fudged quite easily. In fact, in one study, what I have seen, almost the 90% of all companies that are trading on Bombay Stock Exchange fudge their balance sheets. Yes, and there are more than 10 different ways to fudge it also. But there's one element which is that cash in the bank, if not impossible, it's very difficult to fudge. So my suggestion to everyone would be that we should be focusing on how much cash you have in the bank. Incidentally, this is the easiest parameter to measure. You don't need any accountant for that. For example, every morning we can look at from our statement from the bank. Today, most companies, most people have mobile apps. You can at a glance look at it, how much cash you have in the bank, or how much is your cash credit limits are drawn, or how much more cash is still you can withdraw from the bank. It is the easiest. And in any period, you can check how much cash we have generated by looking at the difference between the two. Like we do at our home. It is not complicated. It's very simple. Unfortunately, we have assumed that generating free cash flow is very difficult. It is the easiest of all. Just look at the difference between two periods, the money you have in the bank. It is as simple as that. Let me ask everyone, whosoever is there, is it possible for them to take action to note down how much money they have at a regular frequency? May I request everyone to start noting down every day whether the cash, how much cash they have, has it gone up or gone down? That's the simplest, clearest measure for you, approximately though, whether you're doing well or not. Now let me move on to the next point. What is the goal of any team, whether it's cricket, football, or hockey, any team game? What is the goal? Pradeep Gandhi has said, win. Excellent. If we agree, whatever the goal of the company, I prefer that you have cash in the bank, increasing cash in the bank as the goal. Should different team members have the identical goal or different? Like the goal of every team in the world is, whichever is playing competitive sport, it's to win the match. And I'm sure every single player participating there has single focused goal. We have to win. That's it. Which means all the members of the team have identical goal. However, in my experience, when I ask the top team, 10, 20 people of any organization, small or large, what is your goal of your organization? I rarely have received an near identical answer from all of them. Now imagine in a team, if each member do not have the identical goal, what are the chances that you will win the match? To my mind, it's a fluke. It's like blind playing with blind. Sometimes you win, sometimes somebody else wins. So second thing which I request everyone, irrespective of the goal you have chosen, even if you have not chosen cash as your goal, but whatever may be your goal, request that you align your top team to have identical goal, identical. And the measurement for that should be unambiguous and very clear and very simple to measure. So I'm putting 3 conditions. It should be unambiguous. It should be very simple to work it out. And it should be very simple to measure. No confusion about it. Very clear measurement and very simple, so that it does not take too much of an effort to look at it, whether we are moving ahead or we are lagging behind. Next issue is, for the time being, I'm assuming the goal is 4M, 4Ms for making more and more money as measured by free cash flow. And free cash flow, as I explained a few minutes earlier, it is the difference between your opening cash and closing cash at any period. Another problem which I have experienced, most organizations in the world, I know I'm treading on a very thin ice, including the CFOs, including the CEOs, most of them are financially illiterate. It doesn't matter whether the organization is in India or abroad. Let me give you one small example. 1 month before, when Enron declared bankruptcy, neither the CFO, nor the CEO, nor the executive chairman know that within 1 month they'll be running out of cash. And I have experienced similar things even in India. In fact, check yourself. It's already 15 days past the month of July. And yet, how many of us know how much cash we increased or decreased in the month of July? Any response? Important parameter is, irrespective whether your cash went up or down, I'm not worried for that. If you don't even know the score, what else you're doing? If cash goes up, something is right. If cash is not there, to be honest, then nothing else matters. And incidentally, as I explained earlier, what is the purpose of measurement, including cash? To my mind, it is the simplest, the only answer for that could be help the organization take corrective action for improvement in the future. So now something has happened, good, bad, ugly, I don't know. How often should we take cognizance of that and plan future action? After 1 month, after 1 year, after 3 months? How often? Take a company who has got a turnover of 100 crores a month, I'm saying very clearly, and its profit before tax is about 10%, which is 10 crores. So 30% I'm assuming as the tax rate. So profit after tax is 7 crores. And it is having a little bit issue on cash. Now we want to improve our cash flow. So one suggestion comes, let's increase sales by 10%. Now, if you increase sales by 10%, that's all. And it is possible to do so without increasing any of your fixed expenses, which means no increase in machinery, no investment in plant and machinery, no investment in or increasing any expenses on employees also. None whatsoever. All you have to incur is some extra material cost for selling more. I'll explain in a very, very simple manner. Let's assume our monthly net sale is 100 crores. I've taken monthly gross sale with 18% GST, the tax which we have to pay to the government, and we collect, of course, from our customers, is 18%. So it becomes 118. The totally variable cost is 70%. This includes material, packing, any outsourcing work done, any job on which we pay piece rate. This is typically variable cost, we call it. No calculation of manpower is to be added on this. No allocation of any fixed expenses. Let's assume 70. So 100 is what your net sale was, 70 is your variable cost. So contribution or throughput, as we call it, will be about 30 crores a month. Let's assume their operating expense per month is about 20 crores. So profit before tax becomes 10 crores. Income tax happens to be 30%. So profit after tax is 7. Now, at this stage, assume that without increasing operating expense, we are able to increase our sales by 10%. Can we guarantee that our cash in the bank will be going up? Some response, please.
So there's one response, no. Second, not necessarily. No guarantee. No, no, no.
Okay. So from these responses, I do gather Rohit has said maybe, may not be. Correct. It's both possible. What it's very clear that profit after tax is not the only parameter which determines cash go up or go down in the bank. Something else is also there. Your intuition is pretty good. Let's go down. I'll explain why it can happen. Just come down better. Now, there's one more element which impacts cash flow. It's called working capital. There are three major elements of working capital: receivables, what the customers owe us; inventories, what we keep the inventories all the time; and the credit we are able to get from the vendor. So I'm giving some rough data. Assume that we have extended or we are collecting the money only after 45 days. Now 45 days, your gross sale was 118 crores. So 1.5 months becomes 177 crores. Let us assume that our working capital, inventory as a part of the working capital, is of 3 months of duration. That means material which comes in the company, it takes about 3 months to go out of the factory. Before you invoice it, it is about 3 months. Now, here we have taken at the RM value, the 70 was the RM value. Accordingly, the inventories will increase, or inventories will be 3 months. 70 into 3 is about 210. Then we look at the vendor credit. Vendor credit, again, we have taken 45 days. But please note this, that 70 was our purchases per month. But we have to also pay 18% GST, again on which we are getting 45 days credit. So the net credit from vendors is 123.9. These are the three elements of working capital. The net impact is the net working capital. 177 plus 210 minus 123.9 is 263.1. Is this clear to everyone, please? If somebody is not clear, I will repeat. Okay. Most people, I think, are giving an answer clear. Now let's go on the top. Let's see what happens. We have now increased our sale by 10%. So 100 becomes 110. Monthly gross sale obviously also goes up and becomes nearly 130. Variable cost has also gone up by 10%. 70 has become 77. Contribution throughput has also increased by 10%, 33. Operating expense will not change because we said it upfront that we have more capacity available. We don't need to do that. All we need to get some orders. So 20 remains as it is. Profit before tax will now become 13, 30% increase. Isn't it great? Now let's look at the income tax also. 3.9 goes the income tax. So the profit thereafter is 9.1. There is a 2.1 crore increase. Ira, can you write it in column E, the increase, please? Yeah. Is this clear to everyone, or before I move further? Okay. Most people are saying yes. Now let's look at what happened to the working capital. Now, working capital is also likely to go up in relation to the sales, as you can observe from your own organization. So receivables will go to 194.7, inventories will go by another 10% to 231, vendor credit will also go up. But net working capital has moved from 236.12 to 89.41. Is this clear at this stage? Okay, now let's come down free cash flow. Look, additional profit after tax per month is 2.1, which we had calculated a little while before. Is this clear? Now, additional working capital required is 26.31 crores. The difference, Ira, on column E, please show the difference between the working capital, how much increase it has happened. You have to have this much additional working capital so that you can sell an additional 10%. My question would be, profit after tax increase adds to cash flow. Increase in the working capital depletes the cash flow, though only for a short period. It will take somewhere about 12, 13, 14 months to recover this additional money which has been consumed in the working capital. So if you are in a cash difficulty at this stage, it's better not to increase sales. You will be in further difficulty. Because this is a very crucial thing. It's counterintuitive that at the time when you are having a severe cash issue, increasing sales is detrimental to your cash, unless you improve your working capital norms. Now, you are struggling for cash. At this stage, please do not increase your sales unless you have impacted your working capital norms a little bit or practices a little bit. And I'm giving you a practical example. For one of my clients, where the monthly sale was 1,000 crores, it was making a loss. The gross working capital, and what do I mean by gross working capital? Inventories and receivable was 6,500 crores, which means on a net sales of 1,000 crore, their gross working capital was 6.5 months or 195 days. What did we do? We initially brought down this 6,500 crores net gross working capital to about 4,000 crore in 1 year, by tightening all the receivables and the excess inventory we had. Net result was we had a 4,000 crore reduction in working capital. In the subsequent year, and by the way, in the first year, we did not increase the sale at all. We just corrected the working capital. In the second year, we further squeezed the working capital by another 1,100 crores. Net result was in 2 years, we had 3,600 crores reduction in gross working capital. And incidentally, in the second year, we did increase our sales by 2%, very marginal. And in both the years, we made loss incidentally. So what was the net benefit? The working capital reduction was far more than the loss we had. So we had a net surplus cash in the bank. As luck would have it, the organization was going through an expansion program, and they could not have stopped in between because it would have created more problem. So some portion of this 3,600 crores was to cover the losses, and some remaining portion was used to complete the expansion plan project which was going on in another location. After 5 years, the company's sales today has gone up to 4,000 crore a month, From 1,000, we have gone to 4,000 crores, 4 times. And can anybody guess how much will be our inventories plus receivable? Make any guess, please. Anyone guess? Ira, any response?
There's one response, 1,000 crores. Another one is 1 month turnover, 2,000 crores, 8,000 crores, or 2 months.
Okay. I think it is closest to nearly 1 month, about 25 days. Near about 3,000 crores, maybe a little more than 3,000, about 25 days. My point is that I'm not against sales increase. I'm not against profit increase. But if sales and profit increase results in that you don't have cash to pay salaries, you don't have the cash to pay GST, you don't have the cash to pay your interest to the bank, you don't have the cash to return your loans, it's better not to do that. In every system in the universe, system I'm saying, the performance of the system is determined by the performance of its weakest link. Is this clear to everyone? Like the strength of the chain is determined by the strength of its weakest link, not the average strength of all the links. Is this clear to everyone? Okay. It seems quite a few of them have already attended some previous class, so I can say immediately they are saying yes, yes, yes. Otherwise, I would have expected some different answer. But anyway, so long it's understood, I have no issue whatsoever. Now let's move on. I'm going to now share, there are only 4 physical constraints that we have identified, which are there for any company, which is goal is to make more and more money. The 4 different physical constraints I'm talking about is, one is inadequate orders. The constraint is in order. That is number 1. Many companies, bemoan this fact that we don't have adequate order. The market is very competitive. On this word competitive, time permitting, I'll spend a few minutes more. But adequate orders are not there. This is typically, many companies believe this is their constraint. If they could get more orders, they would have sold more and more money. Another is, no, we have enough orders. We have a capacity constraint. Immediately after the lockdown, in the first lockdown in India last year, one complaint was we don't have adequate manpower. I call it operational constraint. I mean, you have machinery, you have men. If you don't have adequate capacity of the machine or men, either one, you have capacity constraint. The third possible constraint is called supply constraint, which many organizations are suffering even as of the day. For example, most automobile organizations, they are suffering from lack of chips. So you can have a supply constraint also. Then the fourth and the most disastrous constraint is what we call cash constraint. Now, what do we mean by cash constraint? It means you have adequate orders. You have enough capacity to manufacture both men and machines. You have adequate suppliers also who are ready to supply you whatever you need. The only thing they're saying, we cannot supply you unless you pay us upfront. And what is the reason for paying upfront? Can anybody guess? Binay, you are saying lack of working capital. Your vendors don't care whether you got working capital or not. What do the vendors want from you? Payments, Dhruv has mentioned. Look, these are the good suppliers who have been supplying you in the past, but over the period, why are they not ready to give you any more credit? Because you have lost your credibility, you have not paid them on time. Now they're saying, sorry, we cannot afford to give you any more credit. Now first pay me money before you ask for it. Is this clear to everyone, please? You are in cash constraint only and only if the following conditions are satisfied. Number one, there is no shortage of orders. And how do we define shortage of orders? Not what you want, but are you supplying your orders? Are you executing your orders on time and in full? If you're not executing your orders on time in full, why? You have orders. So either you have a problem on your capacity, or you have a problem on supplies, or you have a problem on cash. Is this clear? How we define order constraint? If you're not supplying, if you're not meeting your customer orders on time and in full, then you do not have order constraint. Is this clear to everyone, please? Next, let's look at it. What about capacity constraint? So again, if the utilization of any of your resources, let's say equipment, is this less than 90-95% on 24/7 basis, none of the equipment is being utilized 90% plus on 24/7. Please, I don't care whether you run 1 shift or 2 shift or 3 shift. I'm going to measure 24/7. If none of your equipment has any constraint, none of your equipment utilization is not even close to 90-95%, that means you have adequate capacity. Now, some people can immediately say, what about manpower? Sure enough, if anyone who says that they do not have manpower, I'm not ready to buy that. Something else could be a constraint. Perhaps they are not ready to pay adequate wages to their workers. There is no shortage of workers in the country. It's another matter. At the rate which you want to take the people may not be available, possible. But people are available of every type of skill. I'm not ready to accept that people are not available. People are available. Yes, you may not be ready to offer that. We'll see that little later. Time permitting, I'll explain you how these things have been corrected in many, many companies. Next comes, okay, we don't have shortage of orders. We don't have shortage of capacity. Sir, we have a shortage of supplies. Like these days, we are talking about chip shortage. Yes, it is possible. You can have a constraint in the supplies, but there's a condition for that. Just because your supplier has not given you the material in time in the required quantity, you cannot say that I have a supply constraint. First condition for getting the supplies on time is, do you pay on time? Yes or no? If you don't pay on time, you have zero right to demand from your supplier to deliver the supplies on time. Do you agree? Now, let me now go to the fourth situation. Fourth situation is what we call cash constraint. Here, the situation is we have adequate orders. We are unable to meet our delivery requirements on time and in full in high 90%. We have no equipment which is being utilized over 90% 24/7 basis. We are paying our vendors on time. But now, we have not paid our vendors on time. And hence, on account of that, our suppliers are not ready to give us the material unless paid upfront. This is a situation when we say you can get into cash constraint. Somebody had asked, I don't remember the name, but what if we could organize the funds from the bank or anywhere else? No issue whatsoever. Then you don't have cash constraint. So the last condition for cash constraint is additional cash cannot be easily be arranged. Is this clear to everyone? The various conditions? So there are 4 possible physical constraints. Vimal Vendru has asked, what is the definition of additional one? Additional is that cash is not an issue for generating an adequate material. Vimal, is this clear to you? Okay. Now, depending upon which situation you are, we'll have to now to decide whether to take loans, not loans, etc., etc. But the clarity on 4 possible physical constraints, is it known to understood by everyone? Yes or no?
And, so we are into the business of garments, and just wanted to ask, so in terms of increasing the cash flow, so as you said, like, how can you generate additional business cash flow in the business? I just wanted to understand in terms of our receivables, we have like fixed B2B clients, and being an MSME, we have sort of a 45-day payment. Now, through some of our clients, we are able to arrange like an LC or like a like a sort of a working capital agreement wherein they are able to finance us, but they take like sort of 2% per month, like that's the interest rate. So it's like we don't have a cash constraint as such, but like while the goods have been obviously delayed and all of that, we were in two minds whether to take that scheme up or not. And I remember from the last time when I did your webinar, it was like you were like, at whatever discount there is, just take the cash and be free. So just wanted to understand that for a long term basis, like how should we go about that?
So AG, what's your full form? If I can, I would like to pronounce
Sorry,
your
my
name.
name is Ariman Goenka. Ariman Goenka.
Ariman.
Yeah.
Method is very simple. You can do a calculation on your paper. If you take this 2% offer what they are giving, what happens to your cash? If it goes up, take it. If it doesn't, then don't take it.
Cash obviously goes up, but it's
Then
just like,
what's the problem?
profitability falls.
Shh. First decide what is your goal.
Hmm.
Who the hell told you that profitability, a certain percentage is very important? Who told you?
No one.
These are the wrong things. You have to correct it. I don't care about profit. I don't care about profitability. The most important parameter is cash, nothing else but cash. If your cash is going consistently, what do I care about anything else what you have put in? See, that these are the wrong things we have been drilled into our head. Profit as a percentage of sales, EBITDA as a percentage of sales, all this blah, 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 blah. These are the wrong things you have to remove. Your profitability is great, but you're struggling to pay your bank in time. You're struggling to pay GST on time. Why? What's the reason?
Got it.
You got it?
Got it.
Mr. Goenka, are you clear about it?
Yes.
That's why on day one, I said, please have a clarity. What is your goal?
Got it.
Not goals, goal. Now, the answer lies, now I come to the next one. Is there any other question on this aspect, please?
Dhruv has a question that if he does not have a cash crunch, then why should he do so?
Irrespective of cash crunch or not, should you not increase your cash?
Yes, we should.
That's all. Every other parameter is subordinated to increasing cash flow.
Got it. That answers my question. Thank you.
Every other parameters, my assumption is you have taken cash as your prime parameter. You see why I'm so much hung up on cash? Because ultimately, my request to each one of you would be to not to have borrowings. Sanjeev has asked if you have excess cash. Thank you very much, Sanjeev. I can respond in a few minutes. If you have excess cash, first eliminate the borrowing. Because the amount of freedom you have once you are not indebted to anyone is enormous. The biggest problem is that we have borrowed too much in order to fuel the growth of wrong parameter, growth of sales. Growth of sales, in my view, is not the goal you should be pursuing. It's a means. It's not the goal by itself. Now, I'm going slightly off track, slightly. I'm assuming the goal of every one of us is to be happy. Do you all agree? Please ask the people who have suffered, who have gone through cash constraint or cash crunch, if I can call it, how easily it was easy for them to sleep at night. When the banks are after you to pay, or they will take over your company, they're giving you a threat of taking you to NCLT, are you able to sleep? What is the point of you taking your organization to a couple of $1 billion, but at the end of the day, you are not even able to sleep in the night comfortably? What the hell have you earned? Now, somebody has put the other direction, my good old friend Sanjeev, cash. If you have surplus cash, okay, I'm responding here also. Do you take credit from your suppliers? Somebody can respond. Yes, you have surplus cash. Maybe they are struggling for cash, specifically the small people. Help them get out of cash constraint. And I will not name here, one of the companies with whom I'm indebted in my life, because with their help, I actually generated this concept of cash constraint way back in 2001. Now, 2001, they were in cash constraint. Within 6 months, we had come out of the cash constraint. And you know what? Their normal credit periods to their to customers was 60 days, 60. We offered 50% discount, 50, but payment upfront. Of course, they had one positive thing with going for them. Their pure variable cost was about 40%. And that participant is here, right in the group. 20 years later, I think 10 years later, they sold their company at a huge money. They did exceedingly well. Perhaps they're doing still very well. All I'm trying to say, at the end of the day, the only thing which matters to my mind is whether your cash in the bank is going up or not. So Dhruv, can you help your vendors that, look, I will give you cash. I'll pay you as soon as your, your material arrives in my factory. Look at the positive aspects. Will you get priority, first of all? Dhruv, please respond.
He's saying shall try.
Shall try? What are you talking about it? Let's go the other way around. If your customers are saying, I'll pay you upfront, would you give them priority or not? Tell me that. When everyone is delaying your payment or taking a long credit, there is one person who says, yes, I'll pay you on credit. I don't need a credit from you. I'll pay you immediately. You will give priority to them. This is a customer you don't want to lose. Incidentally, most companies, I'm very blunt, how many of you track, how many of you are tracking whether your vendor payments, how much they are delayed, value of the delayed payments, how many of you track even? Forget about paying it, keeping a track. Look, Dhruv, you say we pay on time. I don't care whether you pay on time or not. I'm asking, do you keep a track? That's all, nothing more, nothing less. Veena is responding no. Dhruv, you're saying yes. Great. Most of the companies, small and big, when I ask them, okay, tell me if you're monitoring, tell me what was your vendor overdues as of 31st July. I have not seen in most companies, MIS, this line itself. Then Abhishek is saying, but sir, customer discount prices. So what? What's the problem? Is discount bad? Abhishek? Abhishek, is discount bad? The question is that. I can't see what you are saying. Abhishek, shifting from one company to another. Please speak.
Abhishek, you have permission to speak. You can share what you want to say.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. So what I'm trying to say is, if we discount the price once, does it not send a trend for other customers? Because, it actually kind of limits how much can you earn on your product or service.
Stop. This is the what do you mean by this This is it's a theoretical calculation you're doing. How much profit I made on this product divided by the price of the sale of the product. Again, the wrong thing. Profitability, this is another nonsense. Number one. Number two, I don't agree that once you have offered something to the customer, you can't change it. Is it always correct? Let me check, Abhishek. Have you ever purchased jewelry for any of your family member?
Yes, sir, I do. Yeah.
Does the gold price change every day?
Yes, sir, it does.
So what's the problem? If gold, what happens in one day? You gone to Tanishq. Yesterday you saw one price. You said, I will come tomorrow and pick up tomorrow. By the time you go there tomorrow, the price has changed. What has changed? The material is already lying for more than one day. What has changed?
But the price of gold is same at Tanishq or Kalyan's or anywhere.
I don't care. No, first of all, it is not. Then you have never purchased properly. That's all I can tell you. They changed the word making charges. Have you heard about this? Do you think the making charges are same everywhere? What are you talking?
So the idea which I'm trying to draw is that if I don't change the price, or if I change the price, the customers shift to the other buyer, other suppliers.
You are wrong. You are wrong.
Okay.
See, once again, what industry you are in?
Sir, currently consulting, sir. Before that, into consumer goods and working for automotive clients now.
Okay. See, you believe the price is the only criteria at which customers go?
It is not, sir. It is not. It is only a fraction of criteria. I agree on that.
It's one criteria, but not the only criteria. Really speaking, Abhishek, the moment you say, sir, our market is very competitive. What do you mean by competitive? Customers only look for price. Basically, it means you have no competitive edge, period. Are you clear, Abhishek?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And now I'm saying to everyone, some of you may be complaining for donkey years that our market is very competitive. The moment this word, your salespeople say our market is very competitive, frankly, it means you have no competitive edge. So the answer is very clear. If you don't have competitive edge, what should you do? If you don't have competitive edge, what shall we do? Help me, Abhishek.
No, so that is something that we need. I don't have an answer, sir. Means it has to be developed. That is something that keeps you, sir.
Sanchit, you are absolutely wrong what you are giving. Nikhil has said correctly, if you don't have, then create one.
Correct.
Is this clear, Abhishek, to you?
Yes, sir, it is.
And if you say, I can't create, then you have no right to be in that business, period. It's
Agreed.
not your birthright to be successful. Murtaza, the same thing, innovation. Do whatever you want. You have to have something which is so unique for which customers are ready to pay you higher money and higher volume of business. If you don't have, then it's a question of you are a me too. You may get a little bit here and there. You may survive also. And if I can use that our old favorite Ajit joke, you are put in a liquid oxygen. What does the meaning of liquid oxygen? Do you remember that joke? Oxygen will not let you die, liquid will not let you live. So you just about merely manage. Abhishek, is this clear?
Yes, sir, it is.
So anyone who speaks that our market is very competitive, our customers are very price sensitive, answer is instantaneously clear. you don't have a competitive edge. Please build one. I'm not covering that today. It can be built irrespective of the business you are in, but I can give you a small example. How many of us use salt in our home? How many of us use salt at our home?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Now, what is the price of salt in India per kilogram? Anybody? Anyone?
Price per kg.
Yeah.
20 rupees to 90 rupees.
In 20 rupees. Now, many of you might have been using another salt of Catch. It comes in a packet of 200 grams for about 33 rupees. Please calculate the cost price per kg. If 200 grams sells for 30 rupees, what is the price per kilo? Anyone to calculate, please? 150 is the correct answer. And normal price of salt is about 15 to 20 rupees. This Catch salt I have been using for over 20 years. Many of you may also be using. Why nobody else is coming up? I don't know the answer. Convenience, yes. Taking an example from here, is cement a commodity or not? Please tell me. Recently, I advised a customer of mine who is in the cement line to start selling cement in 5 kg bags at 50% higher price. I think he has taken to 2 times, not even 50%. Now, when you need only 1 to 5 kilogram of cement, but you are forced to buy either a 50 kg bag or take a loose bag or loose cement, 5 kg, what happens? Would you prefer to pay slightly extra price and don't have all the hassle of storing 50 kg bag and paying more money, etc., because you just needed a few kgs? It is being done. So anyone who says that we can't build a competitive edge, please think carefully. It is possible to build in every business. This is the belief I have. Dhruv, you are absolutely right. The sachet, when it started, per milliliter sachet was more expensive. But overall, people bought it because it was convenient for them. So if you want to improve your cash and eventually become debt-free, first you will have to decide, do you want to become debt-free? See, before you attempt what and how to do it, first you should decide, why do we want to do it? Because if you're not clear on why, you're not convinced, you will not move further. The fundamental question is, do you really want to be debt-free? Or if you're hung up on growth in sales or profits or any other issues, then it's perhaps not useful for you. It's only useful in case you do want to become debt-free. If you don't want to become debt-free, you have a choice. So now onwards, I'm sharing only for those people who want to become debt-free. We have seen, if you want to increase your cash, there are 2 elements: profit after tax and working capital reduction. Is this clear to everyone? Ashok Kumar has said yes.
Yeah.
Now, between the two, I have experienced working capital reduction is far more easier than increasing profits or sales. The reason being, you will see in most companies, the amount of time they work on profit and loss statement vis-a-vis balance sheet statement. In profit and loss, you are all familiar, sales, material cost, profit, and other various costs. You are focusing very strongly on that. How often we focus on inventories and receivables? How often? We don't. Somewhere they're also okay, but nothing much to be done on that. And how much time organization spends on looking at cash part of it? How much money has it gone in the bank, up or down? How much effort is spent? Because if your goal is to increase sales or profitability or profits or EBITDA, you're not going to spend any time on increasing cash. So I'm assuming that those of you who want to increase cash and eventually become debt-free, my recommendation is focus extensively on reducing your working capital. Now in working capital, there are three major elements. What are those three elements? Receivables, inventories, and payables. We should try to reduce inventories and receivables as small as possible and increase payables. Now I'm going to, between the three, which you think is you have majority control? Inventory, receivables, or payables? Please tell. Prashant has mentioned inventory. Perfectly fine. Now inventories also, there are three elements: raw material and bought outs, WIP, and FG. Between these three, where you can do maximum, where you have the highest level of control? RMN has said WIP. Perfect answer. So first step for you should be reduce your WIP. Because WIP can be reduced only by two different ways. There are no third way. Either increase your output or reduce your input. Now, increasing output may still require a lot more efforts. But what stops you is putting less material onto your shop floor. These are the mindsets that as it is, we are getting delayed, let's push more material into the system. Now, the experience has, what we have experienced is, there is an inverse relationship between WIP and output or your production. Generally, we have seen WIP in value multiplied by production in value is almost constant, which means when you increase your production, you will see your WIP has come down. And vice versa. If you increase your WIP, your production comes down. Another simple example from your own experience. In a traffic jam, what happens if more car comes in to the lane? Does the traffic move faster or slow? Actually, by reducing the flow onto the road, you will actually make that traffic flow faster. And those who have gone to Vaishno Devi shrine in the last 15-20 years, you can see earlier, much before, there was no restriction in holding the people. Anybody could just go up. Now they are not allowed. They have controlled the rate of people which are going up. They have controlled, and the overall thing has become much faster. So WIP is one part of it. Another area which is very strong, where you can reduce very significantly, is RM and bought out parts. Again, we make a few mistakes there. We try to take large batches to save freight cost. In large cases, it is so. This is another area where you have to relook at it, because what happens when you buy in large quantity, what are the benefit? Maybe your freight cost comes down. Maybe your per piece rate also comes down. Possible. But it is possible to reduce your batch size. Somebody has mentioned about lead times. Another thing, you want more detail, we'll have to take another session. Inventories are not controlled by lead times. Inventories are controlled at the frequency of purchase. Is this clear to everyone? Is this clear to everyone? Now, if you can control, if you can make your buying more frequent, you will have to buy less material at any given time. Your inventories can come down very significantly. Very significantly. I've given you the example of Jindal. We could reduce our inventories by 40-50% time, 40-50% in just about 1 or 2 years time. In some cases, it came down in one particular areas, it came down by 5 times over 2 years. Consumables, 5 times in 2 years, 5 times. It's possible to do so. There's no magic thing, except till yesterday, most organizations never paid any attention to it. That's all. Another area, when you reduce WIP, then your requirement to keep finished good also comes down. Why? Anybody can tell me? Can anybody tell me? If you reduce your WIP, the requirement to keep finished goods also comes down. Any response?
Lead time reduces due to low WIP.
Lead time reduces. Once your manufacturing lead time itself has come down, why should you keep FG? Incidentally, FG is to be kept only and only if your order fulfillment time is more than the customer's tolerance time. If you can manufacture much faster than the customer needs, you can make all your make to stock orders to make to order. You don't have to keep it in stock at all. So that is another advantage when you try to cut down on your WIP. Much before I got into TOC, I had understood this concept, and I was exchanging a lot of dialogues with my other colleagues on WIP. My son, who is not an engineer, but he was doing his MBA at that time, he said, Papa, these days you are talking a lot more on WIP. What is this word WIP? He's not an engineer at all. And being a consultant, you never answer a question directly. Remember this very carefully. So I asked him, what do you think? And MBAs have one great qualification. They are able to think on their feet. So he said, is it, Papa, waste in production? I said, wow, you did a great job. So to me, WIP is not work in progress, it's waste in production. So think how you can cut it down. May I move to the next point on cash velocity if there's no questions on this aspect?
Yeah, you can move on.
Okay. See, what is cash velocity? Cash velocity is nothing at the rate we are turning our money, cash to cash fast. For example, if you deposit 100 rupees in a bank and after 1 month, the bank gives you 110 rupees. How much what is your rate at which you have increased your money? Somebody can tell me. Can somebody tell me?
There's no response. I think you can just repeat it once again.
Okay. You deposited 100 rupees in a bank, and after 1 month, the bank returns you 110. Somebody is, Mr. Goenka has answered, Aryaman 10%. Now, similar to this, don't worry about a few other things. I'm not making you very simple. You have everything in the world except vitamin M. Vitamin M is money. You have capacity, you have orders, you have suppliers, you have processes, everything is there, Unfortunately, we're running short of raw materials or bought out parts and you can't convert. Now, assume for the sake of simplicity, your pure variable cost is 50%, which means you sell a product for which the material cost, the packing, the freight, etc., purely connected with the sales and production is 50%. Assume for the time being, nothing to look at the fixed cost at all. And you are shortage of funds. Now, if somebody gives you 50 rupees and says, don't worry, I will take this money from you in due course of time. You go to your vendor, give him the 50 rupees. You are in cash constraint. You buy the material. A couple of days it stays in your raw material store. Then another couple of days you take it to manufacture. Then another few days kept in finished goods. Finally given to the customer. And eventually the customer also pays you. This total time is called cash to cash cycle time. Is this clear to everyone? Any confusion? Cash to cash cycle time?
Yes, it's clear.
Now tell me, you have invested 50 rupees of your money giving to the vendor. And after 1 month, you get 100 rupees back in your bank. So what is your rate of interest, or what I call cash velocity, over a month? Please tell me. 50 has become 100 in 1 month's time. Please help me. 100%. Is this clear? Now I'm going to give a little bit more difficult thing. Assume you are in cash constraint. Assume you got everything, but you don't have money. And the person from whom you had borrowed 50 rupees, he said, don't worry, I will take it. At very exorbitant rate of interest, don't worry, I will take it. The same 100 rupees which you have converted from 50 has converted to 100 in 1 month's time. Now, in the next month, after 1 month, how much this will become? You're still in cash constraint. How much it will be? 200. So now I'm asking everyone slightly different question. The same 50 rupees somebody had given to you, and after 2 months, it becomes 200. What is cash velocity now? The same 50 has become 200. Exactly the example I had given you. What is your cash velocity per month? This is where 300%, 400% is wrong. It still remains 100% per month. There's no concept of interest or velocity unless the time is given. Are you clear, everyone? We'll have to do compound interest method. Is this clear to everyone? It is not simple interest. It is compound interest. Is this clear to everyone, please? So cash velocity is exceedingly useful when we are in cash constraint, specifically when you are in cash constraint. Now, during cash constraint, it is quite possible that, let me assume the same thing, your pure variable cost is 50 on a sale of 50 rupees here. Now you have 2 customers. One customer, the cash to cash cycle time is 1 month. And he's going to pay you 80 rupees. He's not ready to give you 100. The second customer, he says, I will pay you 100, but after 2 months. Or the cash to cash cycle time becomes 2 months. We have to take a decision whom to service. I have only 50 rupees in my hand. Should I service customer A, who can give me only 80, but after 1 month? Within a month, I will get it. My cash to cash cycle time is 1 month. In customer B, my cash to cash cycle time is 2 months. So let's calculate. For customer A, 50 is becoming 80 in 1 month. So what is cash velocity per month? Sunil Kulkarni. What is cash flow? 60%. Perfect. Now let's go to customer B. In customer B, 50 is becoming 100, but after 2 months. What is cash velocity? It's slightly difficult. You need to do some formula of compound interest. It is not 100% per month. It is not 50%. 50% is simple interest, Nikhil Dhan. It is 41.4%. Ron is pretty close. Ron. Thank you, Ron. You are joining from Israel. What time is it there? (14:30). Thank you very much. So what this cash velocity is extremely useful when you are close to constraint, when you are close to, when you have cash constraint, or you're close to cash constraint. Ira, can you send them the formula sometime?
Yeah, I will send them the formula with the sample calculation in Excel.
Those who want to write it, I can give it to you right now. Those who want to write it. It is sales divided by pure variable cost. I repeat, sales, net sales divided by pure variable cost. The whole thing raised to power 1 upon cash to cash cycle time in months. And this entire thing is reduced by 1. And then you will get the cash velocity. Yes, Ira, what you have written is perfect. Thank you. S is the sales. PVC is pure variable cost. N is the cash cycle time, cash to cash cycle time in months. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. You calculate. Shall I move to the next point? If cash velocity consumed is clear. Now, let's look at it something quite different. The review process. So first question is, what is the purpose of any measurement? I've already shared once. Can you share it again? I've shared it once.
Improve.
Improve what?
Corrective action, behavior. I can see that some of them have gone through the sessions before.
But if it's a, let me say, a rehash of that, it's perfectly good.
Yeah, so there are a couple more. A
Okay.
few are saying corrective actions, then actual status to reach the goal, flow rate by velocity.
So I'll just make it simple. First is, it should help you take better decisions. Do you all agree? Any review, can you modify the past? Can we modify past? No.
No.
All we can do, learn from it and take better decisions for the future. Do you all agree? Basically, it should help you plan better corrective action to reach your more and more of your goal unit. If cash is your more, then do whatever you need to do. It should help you. Now, how often the review should be done? Most companies do it monthly as an organization. On a production and shop floor, perhaps they'll do shift by shift. But that's your measuring production. I'm not talking about organizational goal. Organizational goal. How often shall we be done? What should be the frequency? Who all should be present there? So let's discuss first part, who all should be there in the review. For the organizational goal, I'm not talking about departmental goal or departmental objective. Help me. So please help me. Who all should be there? Somebody has written management team. I'll give you a simple method. The CEO and her direct reports. That's it. No more, no less. And what we are looking for, that every week we should do better than before. Now, what do we mean by before? Should it be just last week? Last 2 weeks? No. Because there are natural fluctuations. There are many factors happens which goes up and down. I have taken approximately 3 months time. 3 months is exactly 13 weeks. Veena is already shared that. Now, why so special about 13 weeks? One, as it is the number 13 generates immediate interest. Why 13? Because any other number, 10, 12, perhaps people would have kept quiet. But 13, most people would say, why 13? So let me give you, first answer is, at least there's a question asked. Second is that it has exactly 3 month ends. So this reason, sir, our sales was higher, our profit was better because it had a month end and 1 quarter end. So even that area is also eliminated. Is this clear? Now comes that we should be reviewing as a collectively as a team. The focus is not fault finding. Focus is identifying what happened in the past and what corrective action shall we look at it. And by and large, we focus, is the 13-week moving average, is it going up or not? So every week we are looking at the preceding 13 weeks. So it is not, if we are doing in a, once in a, if we are reviewing it in a year, let's say we are in the week 14. In week 14, we'll be looking at from week 2 to week 14 and not week 14 to 26. Is this clear to everyone? We're not measuring quarterly. We're measuring every week for the preceding 13 weeks. Any question on this? Another thing, the only purpose of a measurement is to decide corrective actions. Take better decisions, corrective action. Irrespective of what has happened, we cannot undo it. Often, the reviews, the way it is done, is very painful. Somehow, we only try to save our neck. It doesn't help. Beating the people, even if they've done a blunders, doesn't help. What is important is how can we correct it better? That's what is important. What can we do in the future? So, in order to change this cultural aspect of it, we do very first action, what we do is, please appreciate someone sitting in the room for something done in the last 7 days. Some positive thing, anything positive. It doesn't matter which area, any area. Maria is asking what indicators shall we have? That's another aspect of it. But first, on the appreciation aspect of it, irrespective of what area the first is you have to force yourself to start generating a habit in yourself of appreciating others. Is this clear? Any confusion? Then we look at it. Various parameters could be there. Not one, but various. And there we see what could we have done better in the past. Okay, past is gone. There's nothing much we can do. But from now onwards, what can we do differently for the future, for the forthcoming weeks, so that we are getting better results than the past? That's all. in most cases, the weekly review shouldn't take more than an hour or two, sometimes 3, but after a couple of months, 2 hours is more than sufficient to review the entire company's performance. Now, initially, when we had done this, actually this entire thought process of weekly review had triggered by a client of ours. He said, sir, I have one problem. Our company improves, but we slip back. So what shall we do? That we don't slip. If we don't improve, that's fine, but at least we should not slip back. I thought a lot and then looked at it. What happens, if you're driving uphill? When you're driving uphill and your brakes are not adequate to hold it at a traffic signal and you are going uphill, typically what do? The brakes are not really enough. Car is slipping back. What do we do? Any response? Says gear, put it in. Now, handbrake, yeah, but unfortunately, they're not adequate. So Nikhil said we accelerate slowly and steadily. That means half clutch, half on the brake, etc. But you may realize that many times the trucks, when they're doing it, they can't do that. You know what they do? The helper gets out of the slow moving vehicle and puts a stone behind the rear wheels. Do you agree? It gives a wedge that it should not slip back. I was looking for a similar slip wedge. And I took the example of a cricket game. In a one-day cricket game, how many overs are there? Anybody? Oh, somebody says 100. 100 is in 2 innings. I'm talking about 1 inning, 50. Now, can you see something very interesting in a few minutes? How many weeks we have in a year, approximately? 52. So 52, 50 are very close by. In India, how many working days we have in a week? 6. How many balls we have in a over? In the cricket match? 6. So I took the advantage. I asked them, let's say we are playing a cricket match and we are doing better than before. Now, this is a very important parameter, that every period you have to do better than before. So I asked everyone, do you want to do better than before? Most people said yes, yes. Though some people said, while we want to do better than before, but we have one problem. We don't know how to do it. I said, don't worry. We'll talk about it later. But do you want to do better than before? All I can tell you is I've dealt with thousands of people. I've never come across one person who says, I don't want to improve. Do you think in your life, somebody could have said that I don't want to improve? Will there be anybody? Unlikely. So people want to improve. So I asked them that in every over, shall we make more runs than before? Initially, everyone agreed. Yes, yes, yes. Then one person gets up, he says, sir, it's not possible in every over. I said, why? He said, last over we had hit 2 sixes. Now you don't expect us to hit 2 sixes continuously. I said, yes, you have a point. So what shall we do? He said, our overall run rate from the beginning of the match till that over should keep on improving. That means every over we make at least 1 run more or slightly more than our moving average, so that the moving average keeps on going up. I liked it. And I found the people quite readily accepting this aspect of it. That's where the 13-week moving average concept came in. That whatever happens, our moving average of last 13 weeks keeps on going up. We had experienced some very good results. You can look at our website, see what sort of results people are talking about it. Weekly review, basically we are focusing on how do we improve continuously, never ever go down. Nikhil has said, please explain. I didn't understand. What should I explain again? Please explain that.
Is it the 13-week moving average, Nikhil?
Okay. See, Nikhil, I'll explain you why this 13-week also came in. Initially, we started what we called YTD average. But in one of the clients, we found that after about 6 months or so, we were so small at the beginning that irrespective of anything, our YTD average will go up. Even without making any effort, we have moved so far away. So it was not giving enough challenge to the team. So we said, we will not use the YTD. We will use last 13 weeks, or in the cricket, I would say scoring rate over last 5 overs rather than from the beginning of the match. Are you clear, Nikhil? Okay, that's all I had for the session. If you have any questions, feel free. We still have a few minutes more to answer any question.
One question from Rohit Shinoy. Should we focus on more orders at less profitability? If you can address this one. And last question from Nikhil Dhand. How do we ensure that we do not slip back on that 13-week review cycle? If we can just address these two, I think we'll close after that.
So Rohit Shinoy, this word profitability, first, I don't understand. The word itself, I don't understand. What do you mean by profitability? Can you explain me? I don't understand the word margin. How do you calculate margin? I don't know. The problem is, okay, I know, but you're doing some absolutely wrong things across all organizations, not one, all. How do you calculate the cost of a product? There's a pure variable cost and allocated fixed cost. Do you agree? This has to be stopped instantaneously. There is no idea of, no question of product cost. There's no question of product cost. There's no question of product profit. So if you ask me, oh, if we don't know what is product cost, how can I sell it? What price? Do you determine price? Is price is determined by your cost? Please tell me correctly. I'm waiting for an answer. Price is not determined by your cost. Price is determined by the market customers. What you decide is, should I accept this order or not? That's it. So you need some parameter, some decision matrix. Should I accept this or not? Answer is simple. Assume you take this order. What will happen to your cash in the bank? If the cash is likely to go up, take it. If the cash is not going to go up, don't take it. As simple as that. And now little bit on cost it. Your allocation of fixed cost, please stop doing instantaneously right from today. If you don't take that order, does that cost go away? Then why have it? Rohit has said, no, it will not go away. So why add it? It's done. Having decided to start a business and continue, whether you sell or not, those expenses are going to be there. All you need to know, what is my pure variable cost? Keeping that in mind, if I sell at something at 100, how much is my pure variable cost? And what will happen if I spend so much money in buying the raw material and other variable costs, and then seeing what will happen to my bank in short and little longer, medium term, then decide. Nothing more, nothing less. Rohit Shenoy, is this clear? Okay. Now let me explain to who had asked for PAT after tax incremental part of it.
Yeah, that was Rahul Yadav.
Rahul, we had looked at it that when our sale was 100 crores a month, our profit before tax was 10 crores, and after 30% tax, the profit after tax was 7 crores, correct? When we increase the sales by 10%, then our profit before tax went from 10 to 13, and profit after tax went from 7 to 9.1. So incremental profit after tax was 2.1. Is this clear? Is this clear? Okay, it's time for one last question.
Question. Yeah, Nikhil's
one last question.
was, yeah, his question was, with the 13-week moving average, how do we ensure that we keep going up?
Look, basically, we are igniting the innate desire of everyone to improve. So, Nikhil, have you ever watched a one-day cricket match anytime? Or any cricket match? Nikhil? Yes. Why? Why do you watch? What do you get out of this? You like cricket. You like watching cricket or playing cricket? The two are different. Both. So when you're watching a cricket match in which you're not playing, you don't play at all, no matter how well you cheer up, do you think your voice is going to the stadium and to the player who is playing there? No. Yet we enjoy because somewhere we connect with that team with us. Nikhil, is this clear? Now, we can relate to the score of a team in which we do not have any direct contact whatsoever. But we do like our team to win. Do you agree? All we are trying, I'm changing the match from the cricket to the shop floor, cricket to our company. For us, let us assume our score is cash in the bank going up. That's all. Every week you meet, there's one match every week. And all we are saying, this week our score should be better than the 13-week moving average. Do you think people can't enjoy this? Nikhil? All I'm trying to generate an ownership of every member of the team with the company. We can enjoy some other team success in which we have no stakes whatsoever, really. Now we say we have to have a weekly scorecard. Yes, you're absolutely right. We have to create a clear scorecard. But most important parameter, I'm repeating again, cash in the bank is going up or not. Like in a cricket, what is the most important parameter in any match? Nikhil, tell me. Not runs. Whether you won the match or not, that's the only thing which matters. Not run rate. In February 2006, Australia broke the world record by making 434 runs in the first innings of a one-day match. Never before in the world 400 runs were scored. What happened? In 4 hours, they lost the match. South Africa made 438. It's not the runs. It's not the wickets, Mishra ji. Whether you won the match or not, that's what matters. Is this clear to everyone? Similarly, my assumption is that you have one overriding parameter Has the cash in the bank gone up or not? If the cash in the bank is not going up, something is not right. That's all. Of course, there'll be many other parameters to increase the cash flow. I'm not denying. But at the end of the day, whether you made a century or whether you took 10 wickets, if cash in the bank is not going up, sorry, you have failed in this week. That's all. And I'm talking about moving average. Thank you, everyone, for this patient 2 hours spending with us. Thank you. All the very best to you in life. Thank you.